Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a topic that, well, you probably have some thoughts on, especially given the last few years, the global face mask market. Our sources for this are from cognitive market research, and they give us a really interesting look at the trends from 2021 right through to 2033.
Yeah, and our mission here is really to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising facts.
Hmm.
From all this data, we want to help you understand not just, where the industry is now, but where it's actually heading and why it still matters.
Absolutely, because let's face it, I think a lot of us assumed that, post-pandemic peak, the face mask market would just sort of disappear. But the numbers are telling a different story. What's the biggest misconception people might have?
Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the fascinating thing is it's not disappearing at all. Not really. In fact, back in 2021, the global market was valued at nearly $25 billion. That's 24,925.3 million to be precise.
Well, okay. And here's a kicker. It's projected to grow to almost $30 billion by 2025, and then keep climbing to over $40 billion. That's 40,616.4 million by 2033.
40 billion? Seriously?
Yeah, that's a compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of just over 4%, 4.153% to be exact. So this isn't just about that initial huge pandemic surge. It points to deeper, more sustained trends.
Okay, over 4% sustained growth. That's pretty significant. So
Yeah.
if it's not collapsing, where is this growth actually concentrated? Which regions are driving this? Let's maybe zoom in a bit. Asia Pacific seems like the big one, right? The leader.
Oh, absolutely. Undisputed leader. The data shows revenues there soaring from about $9.5 billion in 2021, all the way up to over $16.6 billion projected by 2033. That's the highest growth globally.
16.6 billion. Okay, so what's happening within Asia Pacific?
Well, it's interesting. China's obviously huge, growing from about $2.7 billion to nearly $4.9 billion. But look at India. Its market is projected to more than double, going from roughly $1.4 billion to over $2.6 billion.
Doubling.
Yeah, and it has the highest key AGR in the region, over 5.5%. That often points to things like, rising health awareness, urbanization, better healthcare access. And it's not just them. Japan's heading towards $2.3 billion. South Korea over $1.2 billion. Australia close to $1.2 billion too by 2033. It's broad.
Okay, so Asia Pacific is clearly a powerhouse. What about North America? Still a major player, I assume.
Definitely. Still very significant. Projected to grow from over $6.4 billion in 2021 to nearly $10 billion, $9.7 billion by 2033.
And the U.S. is leading that charge.
Yes, the U.S. is the dominant force there, expected to expand from about $5.1 billion to almost $7.7 billion.
Right.
But Canada is also showing solid growth, heading towards $1.2 billion, and Mexico is projected to hit over $800 million.
So North America, does this suggest maybe changes in workplace safety rules or something like that, keeping demand steady?
Right. That's a really good point. The sustained growth there, maybe not as explosive as parts of Asia, but steady.
Mm-hmm.
It does suggest that things like workplace safety protocols, maybe a heightened general health consciousness, particularly in industrial settings. It implies that mask usage is becoming, more integrated, part of the standard procedure in certain sectors, not just an emergency measure.
Okay, interesting. Let's cross the Atlantic then. What's the picture in Europe? Also growing, I gather.
Yep, another key region, projected growth from over $5.2 billion back in 2021 to just over $8 billion by 2033.
And who are the leaders within Europe?
Germany looks set to rise to over $1.7 billion. The UK is heading towards nearly $1.2 billion. France is projected to reach almost $930 million. And then you have, other significant markets adding to that collective strength. Italy, around $834 million. Spain, near $736 million. Even Russia, contributing over $435 million by 2033.
So again, pretty widespread growth across the continent.
Exactly. It signals a kind of a broad adoption beyond just immediate crises.
And it's not just these sort of big three regions, right? The growth seems more global than that. You mentioned South America.
Right. South America is projected to grow from about $1.8 billion to over $3 billion by 2033. Brazil's the leader there, expected to hit almost $1.1 billion.
Okay.
Then you've got the Middle East, forecasted to jump from about $1 billion to over $1.7 billion. Saudi Arabia is the key player there, around $485 million projected.
And Africa, too.
Africa as well, showing steady growth from around $850 million in 2021 to over $1.4 billion by 2033. South Africa leads there, projected at over $550 million.
So if you connect all those dots, what's the big picture takeaway from the regional data?
Well, the big picture is While North America and Asia Pacific are definitely the main engines driving this market, the growth isn't just them. It really is global. And that suggests this integration of face masks, it's happening pretty much everywhere in different sectors, indicating a sort of a lasting shift in how we think about public health and industrial safety worldwide.
Okay, so that leads to the big question, right? What does this all mean? If it's not just the, quote, explosive rates of the pandemic peak, why is this market still expanding? What's keeping it going?
Our sources point to a few key drivers. Demand is holding steady across three main areas. Healthcare, obviously, but also industrial settings, and interestingly, the general consumer market, too. But fundamentally, what seems to be underpinning this sustained momentum right through to 2033 is this idea of um, evolving consumer health consciousness combined with ongoing safety regulation.
Evolving health consciousness.
Yeah, it suggests it's becoming less about a specific emergency and more about a general integrated approach to personal and public health, both in daily life and in workplaces.
So you're saying this isn't just like the long tail of the pandemic. It feels like a new normal, a new baseline. What makes you confident it's a fundamental shift and not just, say, certain industries taking longer to wind down their usage?
I think it's the consistency you see in the projections. Across so many different regions, across different sectors, healthcare, industrial, consumer, and looking out over a decade, that steady predicted growth. It suggests something more ingrained than just a temporary response. It points towards maybe a broader understanding of airborne health risks, a greater focus on air quality, and just the normalization of wearing protection in certain jobs or situations. That behavioral aspect, coupled with regulatory nudges, seems to be creating a new, higher baseline for demand.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So let's try and sum this up then. We started with a global face mask market valued at nearly $25 billion in 2021. And despite what many of us might have thought, it's actually projected to grow pretty significantly, exceeding $40 billion by 2033. And this isn't just inertia. It's driven by real sustained demand in healthcare, industrial sectors, and among consumers, all underpinned by this evolving awareness around health and safety.
Exactly. And building on that idea that evolving consumer health consciousness and safety regulations, maybe here's something for you, the listener, to think about. What does this sustained growth really imply for the long term? Could it mean that face masks are becoming perhaps a more permanent feature, not just for crises, but integrated into specific industries, maybe even parts of everyday life? What might that kind of shift tell us about our individual choices and maybe even our societal norms as we look ahead over the next decade? Something to ponder. Okay, let's unpack this. Remember just a few years ago, the simple face mask, mostly seen in hospitals, right? And then suddenly, boom, it was an absolute essential in every single household almost overnight.
Yeah.
It's pretty fascinating how something so everyday can just transform like that so quickly.
It really is, yeah. And that huge shift is, well, exactly what we're diving into today. Our mission really is to understand the current state of the global face mask market, because it's had this surprising evolution. It went from just being a necessity to, well, a really complex and dynamic industry.
Right. And just, where we're getting our info, all our insights today are powered by some pretty extensive research from cognitive market research. So yeah, get ready. We're going to look at the key drivers, maybe some surprising challenges, and some really interesting trends shaping this market. We'll dig into the forces pushing its growth, the big hurdles it's facing, and the new directions it seems to be heading in. So let's start with those drivers. What were the big forces that really kicked off this huge demand for masks? I mean, for most of us, the obvious one has to be just more health awareness, right? The COVID-19 pandemic was like this global wake-up call. It made personal protection feel, well, normal, part of daily life.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about the immediate crisis, it sort of cemented this new public health mindset. We're seeing people using masks, not just for illness, but like proactively against pollution, allergies, general prevention, kind of like how hand sanitizer became such a staple product in households everywhere.
Okay, so individual awareness was huge.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just that, was it? What other big forces were pushing demand, maybe more systematically?
Oh, absolutely. Government regulation and healthcare standards played a massive part. You had regulatory bodies like the WHO, the FDA, bringing in guidelines. They mandated certified masks in public spaces and hospitals, and that seriously boosted demand for, high-quality, standardized masks, especially in healthcare settings. It kind of ensured a level of quality control that, well, wasn't always there before.
Right.
Really changed the game.
Okay. It's easy to focus just on the pandemic effect, but masks were already pretty critical in certain industries way before this, right?
Yeah.
What's the sort of ongoing demand like there?
That's a really important point, yeah.
Wow.
There's always been this kind of baseline need for masks in industrial safety. Think about construction, mining, chemical manufacturing. These jobs always needed good respiratory protection for workers. So, complying with health and safety rules means there's this steady, non-pandemic need for industrial masks. It's just a constant, really, regardless of what's happening with global health.
Okay. But, even with all these strong drivers, the market isn't exactly smooth sailing. There are definitely challenges. And one of the biggest ones, it feels critical, actually, is the environmental damage. All those disposable masks, surgical, N95s.
Yeah, the speed at which those disposable masks became an environmental issue. Wow. It really highlighted a problem, didn't it? A lack of sustainable options ready to go when we needed them. These masks, they're often made of polypropylene, which isn't biodegradable. They ended up in landfills, oceans. Environmentalists rightly raised the alarm. It shows us, for future crises maybe, we need circular solutions baked in from the start, not just as an afterthought. And now we're seeing governments actually thinking about stricter rules, maybe even bans on some plastic PPE that's personal protective equipment.
Right. And then as the immediate panic started to fade, we also saw the market get pretty saturated, didn't we? That kind of panic buying definitely dropped off. I mean, I remember stocking up like crazy, and now, well, not so much.
That sounds very familiar, yeah. As COVID cases went down, vaccines rolled out, the urgency just wasn't there in many places. So naturally, people bought them less often, and that led to an oversupply in a lot of markets, which, obviously hit sales and profits for the manufacturers. It went from that mad scramble to just tons of stock.
And when that demand first exploded, you often hear about supply chain issues. Did that also kind of open the door for maybe less reputable products?
It absolutely did. Yeah, that sudden surge in demand created a sort of vacuum. And unfortunately, some unauthorized manufacturers jumped in, flooding the market with substandard masks that often failed safety tests, which wasn't just a public health risk, it was a big one, but it also really damaged consumer trust, especially in places with weaker regulations. People got wary, and rebuilding that trust is hard.
Okay, so challenges are definitely there. But looking forward, despite those issues, there are some genuinely exciting trends shaping the future here. One of the most significant seems to be this clear shift towards reusable and eco-friendly masks.
It's really interesting how quickly sustainability became such a key focus. And it wasn't just companies deciding this. It was heavily pushed by consumers, by this growing environmental awareness. So now you see manufacturers moving towards organic materials, biodegradable stuff like bamboo fiber, cotton, making washable masks, often with replaceable filters. And consumers, particularly in, say, Europe and North America, they're really drawn to these greener options. It fits with their values. It's sort of a win-win.
Okay, so reusable is a big step. What about the really cutting-edge stuff? Is technology getting involved here?
Oh, definitely. We're kind of entering the era of smart masks. It sounds futuristic, but it's happening. These are starting to appear with advanced features, built-in air purifiers, sensors tracking your breathing, even voice amplification.
Wow.
Yeah, and Bluetooth, some sync up with smartphone apps. They can monitor air quality around you, track user health data. It really appeals to, younger people, tech-savvy crowds who kind of expect technology to improve everything. It's a long way from just a piece of cloth, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And then there's something I genuinely didn't expect from, a public health item. Masks as fashion. It's kind of funny, right? Who'd have thought we'd be matching masks to outfits? I actually saw one with sequins the other day.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. Masks has really gone beyond just being functional. They're a style accessory now. There's been this huge surge in demand for personalized masks, designer ones, masks with themes. You've got luxury brands involved, influencers, independent artists making masks with cool prints, embroidery, seasonal colors. And it's especially popular in really trend-conscious places like South Korea, Japan, parts of the US and Europe too, where, expressing yourself through what you wear is a big deal. It's this interesting mix of function and identity.
So, okay, if we kind of wrap this all up, the face mask market has genuinely shifted, hasn't it? From just being this emergency item to a really dynamic industry with lots of different sides to it.
Yeah.
Protection is still key, obviously, but it's evolving massively. Sustainability, tech, personalization, they're all central now.
And that whole transformation, it really connects to this bigger idea, doesn't it? About how consumer goods can innovate and adapt, especially under pressure. It kind of makes you wonder how quickly things can change their meaning, their function.
Yeah, exactly. So what does this tell us, about how fast everyday items can transform? Or maybe what other things around us might be on the verge of that kind of tech or cultural shift? Could I don't know, your water bottle become a smart health tracker? Or your shoes control your foot temperature? Whether it ends up being a super high-tech smart mask or a simple reusable organic one, the future here looks like it's going to keep involving innovation, adaptation,
Yeah.
resilience too.
It definitely invites you, the listener, to stay informed, stay curious about these forces shaping our world, especially the ones that are kind of hidden in plain sight, changing right in front of us.
And just a reminder, all the insights from this deep dive came straight from that extensive research by Cognitive Market Research. Definitely encourage you to keep exploring and stay curious.